Hi, welcome back. It's time for the State of the Union part of my campaign update for this Wednesday. Welcome. I am Susan Maud Buchser-Lochocki. You can find out more about me at susan4usa.com. That's Susan, the number 4, usa.com. Or, like and subscribe to whatever page you're watching me on. And then you can always get the latest information right away. Anyway, welcome. This is part 2, State of the Union. And, I'm here with the Constitution, and I'm reading the preamble to you. And I want you to notice that it doesn't say anything about being Christian. It doesn't say anything about the Creator. It doesn't say anything except we the people. It doesn't say we the men. It doesn't even say we the citizens. It says we the people of the United States. I mean, that implies that it's the citizens. And at the writing of this document, citizens were also women. They could get passports. So, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. So, the United States is a work in progress, is what that means. Establish justice, which we have. Ensure domestic tranquility, which we don't have. And we have a lot of non-tranquility right now in our country. We got a lot of people who are not happy with what's going on and not being heard. And, people are rebelling. And also in my book here, there's the Declaration of Independence, which is exactly written because the people were unhappy at that time. That's why our country is not part of England today. That's why we are a separate country. Because our forefathers were not happy with how their government was not listening to them. And we have that same problem today. So, domestic tranquility. Now, that's the thing that I want to create. Also, domestic tranquility, because we have domestic violence. And domestic violence is not acceptable. There is a war going on American women in the USA, and it's not acceptable, and it needs to stop. Domestic violence is not acceptable on any way, shape, or form. And then, so we need to come up with a new way of supporting the women so that they can get out of abusive relationships. Now, what I want to say is that in the past, to be a family was a perfectly normal thing, and it was sort of necessary if you had a farm so that you could have a family and run your farm with a couple of adults running around and maybe some teenagers. But since we've moved off the farm and into the cities, the need for families and children are less. And even living together is less. And, as we are working at being a more perfect union, and even as humans, we're still evolving our society. It is time now to see motherhood equally as important as defense. So if we have money for defense, we have money for motherhood. And motherhood does not necessarily mean that you are attached to a man to become a mother. Women's fertility should not be connected to marriage status. Now, I know in the past we were really, run by religions and Zionism and everything, but we are moving away from that. And that's why the Zionists are making like one last stand to try to get us to comply with their demands of, whatever, holy matrimony and all of this stuff. But it leads to abuse, and it's not acceptable. So life is long. The chance of living with one person your whole life is not impossible, but it's not easy. And I mean, as long as the two people respect each other, then it should work fine. It's when one person is not respecting another that the problems arise. And because life is long and because we change, it is difficult, and sometimes it is necessary to no longer be married together for both people's health and happiness. And so we need to start accepting divorce even more than we already do. But we also need to separate the jobs of being a wife and being a mother. You can be a wife if you want, or you can be a mother if you want, and you can actually do the same to one person, or maybe you're a wife once and then maybe you become a mother and then you get divorced, and then you're not a wife anymore, you're just a mother for a time, and then maybe you remarry, and that's also okay. But marriage is not essential to having children. I mean, you need sperm, yes, but you don't technically need a spouse, a man, or even another woman if you're lesbian or something like that. Life is somewhat easier when you are two people working at keeping a household together. Yes, it is easier because then you can share the duties around the house, but then you have to deal with temperaments and other things, and if one person is messier than the other, then that can lead to problems. So, you have to know yourself and know what to sort of expect, and what you're willing to tolerate, So, but being married is no longer what it once was, because men and companies are not paying those salaries anymore. So women are being the big losers right now, because if you decide to get married to a guy who is not a good provider, you are really putting yourself into a position of poverty, and you're putting your children into poverty and everything else. And so it's not working. The system is broken for women, and we need to change it. So we need to set up a domestic tranquility organization, and we need to start paying women to be mothers. If a man wants a wife, that's for the man and the woman to decide how they're going to do that. But it's not necessary if you want to be a mother. That way, women can truly be in charge of their fertility too. And if we pay them a real salary, then they are really independent and can keep any child they create on purpose or even accidentally. It will then be up to them. And I mean, I have a plan for men to get involved, but I think the more important thing is to free women from this trapped thing we call marriage to abusive people. It's no longer working. And so I want to just quickly get back to domestic tranquility. So the concept is that, back before modern times, people were ruled by religion oftentimes, and they had strict rules in certain religions, but there were different religions already. There were schisms upon schisms in Christianity alone, so that you could pretty much find the religion that fit your needs, unless, of course, you were completely without a belief in God, which there was even already atheists back at the time of the starting of our country. So this is not a new thing. Atheism is not new whatsoever. And yeah, So it was already present in the United States at the time of the start of our country, and even before that. So what I can say is that we need to. We need to, in modern times, since we are moving away from religion more to a science background, we need to look at the life quality of our citizens and see if it's working or not for everybody. And it's currently not, because we're still somehow holding on to this belief of one marriage for a lifetime, and it's your one shot and that's it. And this is it's too much pressure on everybody. We're also seeing it in the men that they don't want this either, because it's too stressful. And we've seen several men over the past, during my lifetime, who have decided they've got so much stress that they drive off cliffs with their entire family in their cars. And this is just not acceptable, So men, I hear you too. And that's why it's good to get away from this whole pressure. And therefore you have space to grow as and when you want. And so I think this is a really good solution to this adjustment we're doing in moving away from religion and moving away from Zionism and stuff like that. Now, again, the hold of Christianity on our country is still so strong. And I understand, you Christians don't want to lose your power. I gotcha. But you're going to lose it, because there's growing number non-believers or non-attached to a religion people are the second largest population now in the United States. So we are fast moving forward, and I religion is anyway something you need, not me. You need it. So keep your religion private to yourself. It's yours. It's not mine, and it doesn't belong in my government. Our government was less religious when we first became a country. And I don't like what I'm seeing right now, but it's not too late to change. So the next part of the preamble says, provide for a common defense. So ensure domestic tranquility is even first, and then common defense is second. Because, you don't really have happiness if your own life is not happy, right? You got to work on yourself first. Then promote the general welfare. Now, the general welfare is like roads and bridges and everything else. And secure the blessings of liberty. So then comes the final, making sure that we all have our rights. And one of our rights is to live without religion if we choose. We have freedom in our country, and one of it is to be free of religion. So, and we're supposed to secure the blessings of liberty not only for ourselves but our children. Then do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. So that is how it starts. That's sort of the game plan. Then we have the first 10 amendments. And the very first amendment says clearly, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So, In God We Trust needs to come down off that wall, because I don't trust in God. When I read that, it says, in an imaginary person we trust. Why would I trust in an imaginary fairy tale? I would not. then or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So by removing that from the wall of Congress, we're removing it from the government and the Congress, but free exercise thereof is meant to be for you to walk around and say, the end of the world is coming, the rapture is coming. That's you're free to do. You can walk around on the streets and do that all you want, all day long, but not set in stone in Congress. That's not acceptable. Or abridging the freedom of speech. Again, these rights are for the people, they're not for the government, and Congress cannot make laws to take away our freedom of speech. But what I will say is freedom of speech also means freedom of lying, so just be careful of how freedom of speech really works, because people are free to lie and tell all sorts of things. So that's why right now in the media it's hard to know who's telling the truth or not, because you hear so many mixed stories. It's difficult to know what's truthful. But freedom of speech and freedom of press, again, press, is it truthful? Is it fake news? It's hard to know sometimes, but they have freedom to do that. So we can't, if they want to talk about an imaginary friend, they can. But not Congress, not our government, not our federal buildings, nothing that's getting funded from the government should have anything to do with religion. Or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. So people can peaceably assemble, and the government, Congress, cannot stop them. And then we have the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Now that's what I did with my lawsuit, because I know that there's fraud in the system. I experienced it myself, and this is unacceptable. So I expect integrity from my government. I hope you do too. And then, we're on the same page. So the First Amendment is a pretty big one with lots of good stuff in it that gives us a lot of freedom. And, our forefathers knew that there were people who were atheists and people who were Christian and people who were Muslim and Jewish already at that time and Buddhist at that time. So they specifically said, yes, there's freedom of religion for all, and government has nothing to do with it. So one of my things is we got to take that "in God we trust" stuff off the walls of Congress that was put up by the Zionists back in the 50s and 60s. And, I don't agree with it, and it needs to stop. We are not a Christian nation. No nation should be devoted to a religion anyways. It's dangerous. And we have sadly been working very closely with the Billy Grahams and the Zionist movement over the past 50 years since I've been alive, or even longer, since the end of World War II. And it's unacceptable. It's got to stop, and it's time to really make the change. Now, transition is not easy. I understand. And I know the Zionists are making their last stand right now, trying to, win over the country and keep it for God and whatever. But it's not what the Constitution says. So, then, I want to state this too to you, because I don't think a lot of people know what their rights are here in the USA. And it says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges. And so forcing people to register to vote before they vote is enforcing a law which restricts my privilege of voting. As a citizen, I should be able to vote. I show my passport, I show an ID card, and I vote. Period. End of story. So they've added this registered to vote thing, and they're using it to manipulate all sorts of things and to prevent people from voting and not voting. And even more recently, in a primary, I know somebody who went to vote, and because he wasn't registered in a political party, he was a citizen, they wouldn't let him vote. But yet the state was using federal funds to host that primary for political parties. So, there's just so many places where the 14th Amendment comes in and says that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. So another thing that, and I bring this one up too, is because as a citizen, you have a right to your body. As we saw at the beginning in the First Amendment, where you have the right of freedom of speech, of expression of your body. And if you choose to not remain pregnant when you're pregnant, you have the right to abort because it's your body. And the other creature, if it can't live once it's outside of you, that's that. What a good idea is that if you are going for an abortion, a good concept would be to maybe take the embryo out of you and put it into another woman who will then be pregnant and birth the baby. That's an option that I know happens sometimes, and it's a good option. But I think that the better thing is, instead of pointing fingers at women and saying, don't get pregnant, and, even if you got raped, it's your fault, that's the Christian attitude. We need to break away from that. And instead of forcing a woman to stay pregnant, which again, here it says that that's not possible. States cannot do that. You have the right to an abortion. And there's another amendment that I'll read that also gives you the right to get an abortion. But the states, if we move to my concept where we pay women to have children, then women will be having these children, because being a mother will be a career choice. It will be a profitable career choice. Absolutely. If men can make profit in the Defense Department, then women can make profit from being mothers and having children. So I didn't read the entire 14th Amendment because it's not necessary. My point is already made there. And then in the 13th Amendment is the one which prevents indentured servitude. So neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime. So getting pregnant is not a crime. Thereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So a crime that you were convicted of. And being pregnant, being raped is for the victim is not a crime. Shall exist within the United States or any subject to their jurisdiction. So slavery and involuntary servitude is not allowed in the United States. And Congress has the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So, your state does not have the right to force you into slavery, and making you stay pregnant because you're pregnant, especially from rape or incest, is slavery. It's involuntary servitude also. It's both. So it is not allowed in our country. So if your state tries to prevent you from getting an abortion, you tell them no. You have no right to turn me into a slave or force me into involuntary servitude. See the 13th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. So, and then, like I said, the 14th says clearly that the states don't have a right to enforce any law which shall abridge your privileges. And your privileges is freedom, if that's what you choose to express. So, that's basically the state of our union, is that right now we have states running amok, especially the Christian-run states, the Zionist-run states who think that they have omniscient power, whatever that is. They think that because they believe in an imaginary person, that they can do whatever they want. And the truth is, no, you don't have the right. It's in the Constitution. Atheism was around at the start of our country too, and it was written into our Constitution. You keep your God for yourself. I'll keep my no God for me, and everybody's happy. So, yeah. So that is the state of our union, and what's going on in Gaza and Israel. That's Zionism at its worst, and I'll talk about that in the next video in the state of the world. But you have a right to your religion. Go, be religious. You have something called Sunday school. Send your kids there. That's where kids learn about Jesus and about Sunday, church and whatever. That's not for in our school systems, and that's not for Congress either. So it's time to separate church and state. 2468, separate the church from state. There we go. Thank you for listening to part 2 of today's campaign update and State of the Union. State of the World is coming up next, and we'll talk more then. Thanks for stopping by. I am Susan Maud Buchser-Lochocki, and don't forget to like and subscribe to any page you're seeing this on. Okay, bye for now.